All right, let's go ahead and add a background in here. Then we can use some keyframes to maybe change the color of the background a bit. I'm just going to pop open my demo folder, and as you can see, I've already selected something I thought would make a great background, and maybe a little small, but that's okay. A bit of an increase in size will create a little bit of pixelation, but nothing too major. Remember, we're going to be shrinking this down to about half the size when we go ahead and export this as a GIF. So I'm going to say that that's okay. For a lot of you though, I would recommend starting with a background layer that's large enough to fill the whole screen. But you notice that by putting it at the top, I can't see my snails anymore. So what am I going to do? Well, if I can't just drag on the track, I have to go over to the layers and drag it down. So let's do a couple of things. Make some more space for our layers here. I'm going to twirl close the snail video group, and I'm going to drag, there we go, this background. I'm going to name it background so we can actually see what's going on. All right. So now you see that it goes on for basically ever. And that's because the background, when I dragged it in, became a default size. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to bring it back over here to our last keyframe. And I could get to that fairly easily by just going to next last keyframe, all that good stuff. Yeah, we're going to set this to 2 seconds. All right, and I'm going to click on this video clip that corresponds with the background layer that's on the background track. Phew, that's a lot of stuff to keep track of. I'm going to go to the flyout menu, and I'm going to go to move and trim, and I'm going to move end to playhead. And that will, I could also, let's do trim end at playhead. That will be the correct way to do it. Now the background is shorter. One slight issue, you'll notice that the background, well, at the bottom, we still can't see our snail. So what's going on there? Well, before we fiddle around with it too much, I'm going to save this as version 4. In all likelihood, it just means that the background has not correctly updated after we moved it. So if I just scrub this around a little bit, we can see the background. Sorry, we can see that the render preview will fix itself in RAM. Now I can play. Oh, hey, well, would you look at that? My keyboard shortcuts are working correctly now. I can use the space bar to make it play and stop. So that's good. So this version of Photoshop's just acting a little glitchy. So we'll continue to forge on. So we've got this weird flashing occurring. So I'm just going to scroll around a little bit more to really fix that. Now I could also just close and reopen Photoshop, and that should take care of it as well. Here we go. There we go. Here we go. All right, should play okay. Still a couple little flashes, but we can take care of that later. All right, so I said that we would take this as an opportunity to maybe change some color of something. So I'm going to twirl closed the snail, come to this background. Now I want to do a hue and saturation effect. I could do an adjustment layer here, and it will show up as the hue saturation effect. And notice that we have style, which means we could do some changes to it. We also have a layer mask position. That's new. That has to do with the fact that by default, the adjustment layer comes with a layer mask. So we're not going to worry about that right now. We also have opacity. Now, keep in mind, I could also make the background a smart object and apply hue saturation that way. That would work fine. I'm going to alt-click between the layers to create a clipping mask, just to ensure that I don't have any weird incidences later. And I'm going to get rid of this mask because we don't need, well, actually, let's use the mask, shall we? I'm going to grab the marquee tool here, and let's just change the water to different shades of blue. So I've selected the water, but I actually want to mask out the sky. There are a couple ways I could do this. Delete the layer mask. I could just, with the selection and no layer mask, click the layer mask to mask out the sky. Now it's just the selection. Or I could, when we had the layer mask already, just undoing back to that point, Control Shift I to invert the selection, then fill that invert, which is now the sky, with black. So now this hue and saturation will only affect the water. All right, so good time to save. Now keep in mind that I want this to be a seamless loop. So however I have the hue and saturation at the beginning is how I need the hue and saturation at the end. So I'm going to set a style keyframe. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to set another style keyframe. And I'm just clicking inside this diamond to do that. Now in between, I can change the hue and saturation. Oh, actually, but it's not a style, is it? This is actually an adjustment. My apologies. Style is literally just the change here. So instead of a hue and saturation, I need to do a color overlay. So my bad. Let's fix that anyway. Let's do this. We'll come back to that one in a moment. I just managed to confuse myself. Not being a style, it's actually just going to be a hue and saturation by itself. So let's use opacity instead. So we'll do this because I still want to change the color with this. I kind of liked where we were going with that. I'm going to do a hue shift so that we get more of a blue, but this will be stable throughout all of time. So what I will do is do an opacity change. I will set the opacity to be 0. And I will do that by just dropping the opacity on this adjustment layer. Now at the very end, it will need to be back at 0. So I'll add in a keyframe. And now I will go ahead and increase the opacity. Okay, here we go. So that will be an opacity change that will make it change essentially color or hue in this case, back and forth. But I said that we do a style, so let's go ahead and do a style. So that's one way you can do it, but I said I'd do a style, so let's go ahead and do a style effect. So now, again, we want it to return to however it was by the beginning of this. So I'm going to set the style keyframe here. And let's set another one here. All right. Now at this point, so this way it's back to default. Now at this point, I'm going to change the style. So I will add a color overlay. And let's go into the color overlay. And we'll do multiply color overlay. And we'll do a blue. Okay. So notice we have a new keyframe. So now we'll have it shift colors a few different times. And in fact, I can shift this opacity over. So we'll see it change that color, and then also the adjustment layer itself has this purple. All right, let's watch it go. There we go. So for those who are keeping track, we currently have two different animated elements. We have the water and the snail. Now the snail moving and its little eye stalks wiggling do not count as two animated elements. You're going to want to have something else in here as well. So let's do maybe a fish leaping out of the water, and we can play with masks. We'll do that in the next video. Oh, but first save. See you next video.